Good morning. My name's Aaron Weiss, and welcome to Pasadena, California, and the home of My Flying A Garage. For a historical perspective, today is Memorial Day, May 25th, 2020. And we've taken the day off to come down to the garage and take a look at my beaters. So with that said, we're going to go through the garage and we'll look at each car, and I'll give you a little bit of a history on each one. But before we start, there's a couple things I got to tell you. Everybody always asks me what it's all worth, and I have no idea. I've never bought a car because I thought it was going to go up in value. I bought what I liked. I have no favorite car, but I will tell you that on the day I bought them, that car was my favorite car. The love affair might have not lasted until I found another one, but you know how that goes. So without further ado, let's go into the garage and let's look at the cars. We're standing in front of a 1937 Horch 853 Sport Cabriolet, bodied by Glasser. This car was a predecessor to what we now know as Audi. In the 30s, it was part of Auto Union, and after the war, the surviving marque was Audi. The car has 139.5-inch wheelbase. It's a 5-liter straight 8. And it has a top speed of a whopping 87 miles per hour. It's got a 4-speed manual transmission, and this car was at Pebble Beach in 2019, where it won second in its class and Elegance in Motion award. It's a really great running car. It took about 2 years to restore, and fortunately we had all the parts because you can't find any anywhere. There's only about 12 left in the United States that we're aware of, and maybe only a handful in Europe. So we could easily project that there's only 24 of these left in the world. We're now standing in front of a 1929 Auburn Boattail Speedster, model 8120, meaning 8-cylinder engine with 120 horsepower. These were halo cars that Auburn really didn't think would sell well, but they would bring people into the showrooms. And this was the second year that Auburn made Boattail Speedsters until they went out of business in 1937. Moving along, the next car is a 1937 Cord Model 812 Sport Cabriolet. The car is revolutionary for its time because it has front-wheel drive, hidden headlights, and auto-select transmission. Moving along here, the next car is a 1931 Chrysler Imperial CG dual-cowl Phaeton. This was one of the first luxury cars that Chrysler made, and it is a dual-cowl Phaeton, which means the front windshield sits on the cowl, and there's a second cowl behind the driver's seat, which flips open and people can sit behind, and the windscreen covers them from the wind and some of the elements. Again, it's an open Phaeton, so it would have had side curtains when it was raining. We're now standing in front of 3 Rolls Royces. Many people don't realize that from 1931 back to 1921, Rolls-Royce had a manufacturing plant in Springfield, Massachusetts. The 25 Silver Ghost and this 29 Phantom 1 were made in America and have American bodies. The car behind me is a 1931 Phantom 2, the successor model, and it was actually built in England and imported to the United States, where it was fitted with, again, a Brewster body. Okay, we're now standing in front of a row of V16 automobiles. Basically, there were 2 manufacturers in America that made V16 cars, Cadillac and Marmon. So the 2 cars I'm standing in front of is a 1933 Marmon 2-door convertible coupe and a 1931 Marmon 4-door convertible, also known, as I said earlier, as an all-weather Phaeton. Marmon started making V16s in 1931 and went broke promptly in 1933. It's interesting to note that Cadillac made their V16s for 11 model years. The majority of them were sold in 1930. And so Marmon missed the first year and the market and then of course the country was in a depression and there weren't a whole lot of sales. Okay, we're sitting in front of a 1938 Cadillac V16 two-door convertible coupe, of which 11 were made over the 3-year model run. By 1938, Cadillac had changed from a 110-degree V8 to a flat head V16. And they also, in the process, reduced the number of parts from 3,600 to 1,800. These two cars are 1933 Cadillac V16s. This green one was one of two that were built as Victorias, meaning it's a two-door with a back seat, where this one is two doors with a rumble seat. The original owner of the green car was Robert Montgomery, who is a fairly well-known musician and actor. This red 1933 was the only Fisher body V16 built. And we're not sure why. There might have been a price point involved, but almost every other V16 that was made had a Fleetwood body. The final two cars are a 1930 and a 1931 Cadillac V16s. The one in the corner here that's red and silver is a Roadster. That means that it does not have roll-up windows, rather it has curtains and a rumble seat, where a convertible coupe would have roll-up windows. This car is a 1931 Sport Phaeton. Again, open car, curtains, it has a dividing window, and what's really interesting about the car is that there is both a clock and a speedometer in the back seat. So the passenger would know how fast the chauffeur was taking them. Right now we're standing in front of a 1933 Packard Series 1005 two-door convertible coupe. The car is outfitted with a 12-cylinder engine, three-speed gearbox. Its top speed would be 135 miles an hour, and the engine size is 445 cubic inches. This is a car that we did a frame-off restoration on, took it on the show circuit. It is a car that my wife says has an attitude because it always wins best in show, and it gets really pissed off when it doesn't. These are two Chrysler Town & Countries, a 1942 and a 1946. What is most interesting about the cars is that this model was the last production prior to Congress enacting legislation barring automobile companies from the production of passenger automobiles and directing their attention to producing tanks and airplanes. The 46 is the first model that occurred after Congress repealed the law. So you can see that during the 4-year period of the war, the cars, there was no research and development that could be done. So when Congress repealed the law, the car companies had to address an incredible demand, and they really didn't have time to retool. So when you look at the two cars, there's a lot of similarities because they had to use the same tooling. Both of the cars have the same 323 cubic inch 6-cylinder engines, and they have a top speed of 85 miles an hour. They built 995 barrel-back station wagons, and it is estimated that only 15 survive. The same can't be said of the Town & Countries because a lot of them survived. The biggest problem in the survival rate of the Woodies is that they needed to be revarnished every 2 years. If they didn't, the wood dried up, started to warp, and the cars were just crushed. This is a 1962 Jaguar XKE Roadster 3.8. When it was produced, it was introduced at the Paris car show, at which point Enzo Ferrari proclaimed it was the most beautiful car in the world. This is a car that I bought fully restored. It's probably one of the only cars I've never done anything to. It's really fun to drive, it's fast, it's quick. It'll do 149 miles an hour. It has, as I said, a 3.8 liter engine and 6-cylinder, and a 96-inch wheelbase, 4-speed manual transmission. This is a 1956 Mercedes-Benz 300 SE Cabriolet. They made 50 of these models, and they were the last Mercedes that was hand-built. Unlike a 300S, this car is injected as opposed to aspirated. There was also a Roadster that was made, almost identical, except the top is disappearing and it doesn't have the brougham bars. At the time that this vehicle was manufactured, it actually had an MSRP that exceeded that of a Rolls-Royce. And so the buyer of this car, who we don't know who the original one was, but probably was looking at a Rolls-Royce as well. It's probably one of the most luxurious Mercedes ever built. The next car is a 1936 Mercedes 290 Cabriolet A. In its day, it was a price point car, with the 500K and the 540K being the top of the line. This car was found in Wiesbaden, Germany, an effort of Mercedes-Benz Classic Center to find me a car. We found it and did a sympathetic restoration on it, because in Germany, in order to drive a car on the road, you have to have modern turn signals, and we wanted to bring it back to its original condition with trafficators and its original running lights. It's a great car. It always starts, it always behaves. It has a 3-speed transmission with an overdrive, and the car will easily do 70, 80 miles an hour on the freeway. Of all the cars in the warehouse, if someone asked me, let's go to New York, this is the car I'd take, we'd get in it, and believe it or not, I have every confidence we would make it. Some of you may wonder why I have this car, but I like it, and there's a story behind it. For 17 years, my wife Valerie drove a 300 CD, and she was really mad at me when I pronounced it dead one afternoon and forced her to buy a new one. Going on Bring a Trailer, I saw the car for sale and successfully bid on it and bought it. You can see the license plate says Val's 1982 300 CD, an effort to get my wife to get involved with the collection, which hasn't worked out well. The car came, as you see it, incredibly clean, in incredibly great condition. It is a great running car and just something fun to have, and it's kind of nostalgic given that my wife had it for so long. This is a 1971 Porsche 914-6. The reason I have the car is when I was in college, the car came out and I couldn't afford one. But now that I can, I finally got my car. It's really a fun car to drive. It's really low to the ground. It's like driving a little race car. And it is in absolutely mint condition. It's been restored back to its original manufacturer specification level, and just fun car to have. Above on the rack is a 1963 Volkswagen Karmann Ghia Type 34 Razor. The reason it's called Razor is because the sharp cut lines on the front. This car was never manufactured or imported to the United States. Any cars that are here were brought in by collectors. It has a 1500cc engine, 4-speed manual gearbox, a whopping 50 horsepower, and a top speed somewhere around 90 miles an hour, although I wouldn't want to guess how long it would take to get to 90 miles an hour. The car has been fully restored and is probably one of the better ones I've ever seen. It's a two-tone gray. You can't see it, but it has a cream-colored top and a matching interior. Okay, in this corner we have 3 Mercedes-Benz coupes, a 190 SL, a 280 SL, and a 450 SLC. We're going to start. The 450 SLC has a little story behind it. When I bought my first Mercedes, this car was sitting in the showroom with a sticker of around $35,000, which seemed like $1 billion to me, and I always wanted one. Years later, when my oldest son needed a car, I bought one, and he trashed it. we had to get rid of it. But years later, I was at an auction and picked up this car for the whopping sum of $5,500, a bargain that could not be passed by. We did not repaint it. We put a new interior in it, did a little bit of mechanical work, and it's one of my most reliable driving cars. It's a car that I would take on a car function because it has all of the creature comforts and it is remarkably reliable. The other factor is it has an automatic transmission, which my wife can drive if need be. The two cars, the 280 SL and the 190 SL, were restored by the Mercedes Classic Center in Irvine, California. They are frame-off restorations, and if you haven't noticed, I am partial to blue. These colors were pretty much known as topaz blue, and really that's probably one of my favorite colors on a Mercedes coupe. This is a 1999 Rolls-Royce Silver Seraph. It was a car that I bought for myself for my 50th birthday, and we've had it for 21 years. Gives you an idea how old I am. The car has a whopping 15,900 miles on it. If we divided the price by the miles, I think I'd go into a state of depression. But what is interesting about the car, it is the last production car that Rolls-Royce built before the company was split. Bentley was sold to Volkswagen, and the name Rolls-Royce was sold to BMW. The car has a 12-cylinder BMW engine and drivetrain. Very comfortable, very fast, but we just don't have a place to take it, so it sits here and drips oil. I'm standing beside two of Cadillac's biggest bombs, a 1993 Cadillac Elante and a 2004 Cadillac XLR. This was Cadillac's attempt to compete with the Mercedes 500 and 560 SLs. There was no competition. Cadillac underpowered their cars, and the amenities didn't even come close to what a Mercedes would be. But these were two of my daily drivers, and when the time came, it was just better to clean them up and put them here in the warehouse than it was to trade them in. We take the XLR on road trips occasionally, and the Elante is equally reliable. The Elante in 1993 did not come with the hardtop because they couldn't sell the car and they had to reduce the price. So making the hardtop an option accomplished that by about $5,000. The car is outfitted with the digital display as opposed to the analog, which is the more desirable of the two. Well, this is the final car we're going to talk about today, and it is a 1967 Mercedes 300 SE Cabriolet. In 1967, it was the top of the line. The more popular collector car is the 280 SE 3.5, which is a 8-cylinder. But the difference between the two is 5 horsepower. This car has a 6-cylinder, but the 6-cylinder was remarkably more reliable than the 8. So for 5 horsepower, I decided to get this, to say nothing of the difference in price. The car rides on air and is a very smooth, luxurious ride. The inside has more wood trim than the 280, and in general it is just a more luxurious automobile. Well, thank you for coming and joining me at the Flying A Garage this morning. I hope you enjoyed the tour, and I hope to see you again soon.